Hey guys, how's it going? My name is Dalram, and I got you guys one question. Just one question to answer. Do you miss combat rogues? Now I want to talk a little bit about some of the main differences between outlaw rogues and combat rogues from a PvE as well as a PvP perspective, and mostly kind of take on the PvP part of this discussion and talk a little bit about it. I got this question the other day asking me if I miss combat rogues, and for the most part I had to say no. But when you think about it, for PvP, you kind of have to lean towards combat rogues. And let me explain why. What's the big difference between outlaw rogues and combat rogues? For the most part, the specs are very similar, except for a few name of their abilities. One of the specs keeps a revealing strike on the target at all times, and that's literally all you do. You just maintain revealing strike. And the other doesn't. And the other has a little bit more of proc-based abilities, with your pistol shot proccing off of your saber slashes proccing other saber slashes, and so on. So a combat rogue is a very straightforward class. You basically spam one button once you don't have revealing strike on the enemy, and then you use finishers, and you have really 3 finishers to spend into as a warlord or general. So as an outlaw rogue, you have 3 finishers as well to spend into, but an outlaw rogue offers you a more dynamic style, and the dynamic style comes from your roll of the bones. Now, as a combat rogue, you don't really have a dynamic playstyle. You got slice and dice every time, and you just went through as many eviscerates as you could and as high of common points as possible. And that's basically what you did. But for PvP, on the other hand, that's where the gameplay was a little bit different. One of the things that made PvP for combat rogues a little bit easier was the guaranteed mechanic of deep insight. And let me talk a little bit about the guaranteed mechanic aspect of it. One of the best aspects of a combat rogue, not only because it dealt insane damage, not only because it could lock down a target for 12 seconds of a stun, but also because of the deep insight mechanic gave you a guaranteed kill with a killing spree. So you had a guaranteed mechanic of burst. It was just very rampy. Now what Blizzard decided to do for Legion is to switch from combat rogue to outlaw rogue, which is first of all a fun playstyle, and second, the mechanic of it is more RNG based, but it gives you less of the rampiness that you would find with a combat rogue. The main burst mechanic for outlaw rogues is when you get all 6 buffs from all the bones, but all of you know, if you watch my videos, how RNG that is. The big difference for PvP between combat rogues and outlaw rogues is combat rogues eventually would get their mechanic to deal massive damage, and it would be eventually. You could kind of predict it, you could build for it, and you had patience. Yes, other enemies could kind of lock you out of that mechanic if they were able to CC you long enough so you couldn't advance into deeper insight, but it was still a mechanic that you could manage and had control over. As an outlaw rogue, you don't really have control over your buffs, how many buffs you roll at an enemy, so you kind of got to keep rolling buffs until you get a good combination of them and then take advantage of them as best as possible. Now for some people, this mechanic of buffs is awesome, and I saw a lot of potential in it, but after playing for a while, I see definitely a lot of drawback out of it. The biggest drawback is the fact that you don't have control over it. And on one hand, not having control with something and relying a little bit on RNG isn't terrible. I mean, look at Hearthstone. That game has a little bit of RNG and a little bit of competitive side, but it's still very much fun. But for World of Warcraft, I feel like this is the kind of game, especially for the competitive environment, where the RNG kind of plays against you, especially away from your favor. In those situations where, let's say as an outlaw rogue, when you roll the same crappy buff over and over and over, no matter how many rolls you throw into, when you roll the same buff over and over and over again, it gets very, very annoying when it comes to PvP. Now in PvP, when you have the capability to have a little bit more control over mechanics that you are, I guess, trying to set up, yes, the enemies can see them from a mile away, but at least it gives you the opportunity to have this guarantee. As a combat rogue, once you get deep inside killing spree in a full stun lock on the enemy with internal bleeding ticking on them while revealing strike is up, you knew that this was GG. This was done. You've accomplished what you were supposed to. You didn't rely on some random chances. You did what you meant to. You did what you had to. And it was just straightforward, cut and dry, no questions asked, no concerns ever. And I don't know, I kind of miss that mechanic. Well, you do get the same or similar mechanic when you play in Subtlety or when you play in Assassination, because you have a little bit more control when it comes to cooldowns. For outlaw rogues, you do have cooldowns that you do have control over, but your roll the bones plays such a big part that it is really difficult for you to set up burst without it. Once you have all 6 buffs, you are basically in god mode. And outside of 6 buffs, you basically want to have cooldown reduction so you can get your other cooldowns back much faster. or some kind of combination of maybe 2 or 3 really good buffs together, so it feels like you have pressure. Otherwise, it feels like you're slapping everybody with a wet noodle. And I was just thinking about it, what if this was a mechanic that could be brought back for Outlaw Rogues? Now, Combat Rogues by no means was the best spec in the world. I don't think it was the best spec I've ever played. It was good for a bit of time, and in World it was still fun, and I enjoyed it tremendously. But we do have this dynamic change with Outlaw Rogue. You do have the varied mechanics. You do have the roll the bones. You have the procs that go off. There's basically a lot more going on with your class when you're playing Outlaw compared to Combat. But you have to look at Combat and look at its advantages and the fact that you have guarantees in terms of some of the types of damages that you are able to set up. And those guarantees is something that I would definitely want to see brought back. With patch 7.1.5, Blizzard has the opportunity to make rogues great again and maybe give them some well-deserved buffs that we've seen, because so far Blizzard has nerfed rogues every single patch. And I'm pretty hopeful, and I believe that Blizzard will do the right thing. Even if rogues do get nerfed, then at least maybe they'll bring in the deep insight mechanic or some other mechanics to give it a little bit more guarantee when it comes to Outlaw Rogues. That, or maybe we'll just all start playing Slice and Dice, where we'll have guaranteed amount of energy control, guaranteed amount of attack speed, and maybe that'll be enough for us to be a monster when we are sitting on the healer, just auto-attacking the back-to-back, multi-strikes, no, not multi-strikes, what am I talking about? Mastery hits are proccing, the auto-attacks are proccing, everything is proccing all over the place, right? Maybe. Just maybe, but we'll have to see. And again, I'm very hopeful. Definitely want to see what we are going to get in the future of Legion. I'm still very excited and having a lot of fun with the expansion thus far. But you do have to look at some of the older iterations of the game. Like, some people are looking at older iterations of Vanilla WoW and they're going to Nostarius and whatnot. There are definitely things that Blizzard has done well in the past. While not everything was good, there are a certain few things that were done especially well. And one of the things I thought was Combat Rogues and the way that they were designed. So maybe if Blizzard can roll back some of those designs a little bit, that would be awesome. A lot like what they're doing for Hunters, where they are allowing Hunters to get traps back for all specs. So maybe something like this could come back to all specs of Rogue. But we'll see how it is in the future. I am definitely hopeful. But my main question is, do you guys miss Combat Rogues or any of the Combat Rogue mechanics from the past? That is the main question for the video, so if you do have a response, please leave it in the comments below. Otherwise, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed. This is just some thoughts that I had about Combat Rogues the other day, and I just wanted to put them out on the video. Thank you all, and everybody have yourselves a great day.